All right. Cut my camera.
No.
And let's give it about a minute.
Dog gives his approval
To let people in. And
all right,
then
maybe that'll help. I've been having
close.
issues where I keep going in and out, so hopefully this will stop it. Give me the go, Dan, when you're ready.
Yeah, let's give it about
Hopefully
20
we
more
won't have another
seconds.
crash out in the middle of this thing. If so, you'll have to.
All right, Dwayne, go ahead and get things started.
Hello, folks. My name is Dwayne, science fiction fantasy buyer at the University Bookstore. Been doing that for a little while. Tonight we are featuring author Madeleine Roux, whose new book, where did I put the copy? That's too close. Let's see. It doesn't work that well. I gotta learn better how to do this. Reclaimed, anyway, it just came out on sale officially today. And we'll have signed copies pretty soon. And you can buy them from us online or in person. And if you want to order one personalized, go to our website and ask for it. I'm sure we can get her to take care of that at some point too. I don't promise overnight, everyone's got their own life, but she lives, I think, reasonably close to us. I was looking at your record, Mal, and you've been a really busy person. I had forgotten about the Asylum series. I did remember the House of Furies. I had not realized you'd written for both Star Wars, D&D, and Warcraft. And you've got something else coming up this spring I don't know about, but in the meantime, we're here to talk about Reclaim. Do you want to talk more about the book or read a little bit first and then talk about it?
Maybe I can set it up. I always feel like, just reading the first chapter, it can be a little disorienting if you don't know sort of the back copy. Also, I have a little co-host here tonight, Bingley, who will be helping me. But the book is not a sequel to Salvage. Salvage was the first book in duology, but they're standalones. So you don't need to have read Salvage to understand this universe. If you did, you'll notice some little Easter eggs in Reclaimed. But it sort of centers around three individuals. Senna, who has escaped from a very dangerous and deadly space cult. Zuri, who is an androgynous supermodel of the universe. And Han, who is a young computer savant. And they've all experienced recent tragedies, recent traumas, and they're not coping with them well. And they're looking for a way to sort of escape those bad memories. And a very strange and well-known sort of tech playboy reaches out to them and says, hey, do you want to join this program? We have this experimental technology. It can remove those traumatic memories and you can get on with your life. And so for various reasons, they all decide to jump at the chance and go on this adventure. And they arrive at this station. It's very isolated. It's on Ganymede. And they very soon realize that nothing is what it seems, and it gets spooky and scary from there.
Right, your co-star is very distracted as he's chewing on something.
I know, he's got a little bat that he won't leave alone. Thank you, Smidge. Go play.
Okay, do you want us to read a little bit of the first chapter?
Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna read the first chapter. Hopefully with that background, it'll sort of make sense. But yeah, I will take it away. More than anything else, Senna remembered the bitter silence. At some point during the night, everyone around her on the ship stopped breathing. The soft human sounds of sleep had mixed with the reverberation of space outside the passenger craft, a lullaby of organic white noise that helped her drift to sleep. But once it was gone, the absence was far louder, unmistakable. It was like how she imagined the dead of winter, still and adrift, though Senna had never experienced a true winter herself. Her entire life had been lived in outer space, and more than that, in almost total confinement. She had taken a pill and gone to sleep surrounded by life, then woke among the dead. Senna had rolled over, tossing restlessly, and felt her hand brush something cold and almost rubbery on the sleeping mat next to hers. Startled by the sensation, she jerked awake, and under the reddish glow of the emergency lights above, she found herself staring down into the open, glazed eyes of her best friend, Mina. The blood trickling from between Mina's full lips was as crimson as the emergency lights blinking overhead. Senna gasped, and it was the only sound in the entire ship. Oh my God, they're all dead. You can't leave me, she whispered to Mina. The fear made her tremble. The shock made her grab Mina by the shoulders and shake. Her bones were thin and bird-like, and her head swiveled back and forth as Senna tried to rouse her. Nothing. A door opened across the room, and Senna whirled to face it, torn between the sudden knowledge that she was alone and now the worse fear that she wasn't, that whoever was responsible for all this death was still alive and with her, that she was next. Senna, she heard him say, I didn't know you were awake. Why was she the only one left alive? And why wasn't he surprised by it? She didn't know what to say. What could she say? They're all dead, every last one of them, except for you and me. Hello, lady? Earth to Blondie. She blinked hard, gazing around not at the interior of a doomed passenger craft, but at an impatient barista glaring down into her face. Grabbing her chest, Senna nodded and waved at him, but the memory took its time fading away. 1 year ago. It still felt like she was living inside that moment, crushed on all sides by it. I didn't know you were awake, Priest had said. To her, it still felt like she was deep, deep asleep, dragged under. Sorry, Senna stammered. She hadn't been outside Marin's apartment in weeks. The neon haze of Tokyo Bliss Station hurt her eyes. A halo lingered around the barista's head. The self-driving coffee cart lit with an amber glow. How much is it? 10 for the drink, the barista replied. He was tall and thin, tattooed from the collar of his shirt and apron to his mouth. A series of scrollwork arrows pointed to the ring glinting in his lip. 3 for the cup. Senna frowned up at him. 3? Really? Rolling his eyes, he shrugged and handed her the mottled brown cup, frothy yellow liquid steaming inside. Fine, no charge for the cup. Bring something reusable next time, okay? Anything else I can get you? Senna stared down into the drink, the familiar color and smell threatening to bring another wave of painful nostalgia. Anything else, she mused. A new brain? A tranquilizer? No, Senna told the young man. No, that's all. Just remember the cup thing, he muttered, tapping the scanner on the coffee cart counter, waiting for Senna to hold up her wrist and flash the VIT monitor that ought to be there. But Senna still didn't have one. The barista noticed, the specter of his shaved off eyebrows looming over his eyes. She will, Marin to the rescue. She'll remember for next time, and I'll take a sweet trip. The barista sighed. Line jumpers pay double for their cups. Fine. Marin, petite and dressed in pristine white patent leather with a glossy black curtain of hair, leaned across Senna and swiped her own wrist monitor across the scanner. The machine dinged cheerfully. Transaction complete. She glared at the thing toiling away behind the barista. AI servitors, working husks of robots skinned with a kind of human latex mask over a carbon skeleton, were everywhere. All the laborers across the stations, on the colonies, and on science vessels. You know Sective is going to roll out lifelike versions of those things soon, with human fucking faces and skin and everything. I guess the regular peacekeeping bots aren't intimidating enough or something, said Marin in a disgusted undertone. She shuddered. So creepy. Will we be able to tell the difference? Senna asked, more amazed than afraid. I've seen this dystopian vid, and the answer is no. As soon as the coffee arrived, Marin tugged Senna away from the car quickly, back toward the carbon black folding chairs and tables clustered on the promenade. The glitzier upper levels of the station rotated above them, rings that rose to impossible heights, financial districts and fashion houses, arcade blocks, cosmetic surgery clinics, augmented reality parlors, and universities. Down on their level, close to the bottom of the station and hydroponica, nothing could be done to control the heat. The food and water operations needed the cooling systems, not the impoverished districts hovering just above them. So Senna drank her Haldi Kadud in the swelter, accustomed to it. The hot turmeric milk almost scorched her mouth as she took a sip. I don't know how you can drink that stuff, Marin murmured. It's good, said Senna, shrugging. Blah. Anyway, sorry I'm late. Senna sat across from her at one of the empty tables. The lunch rush crowds swarmed around them in the plaza, drawn to the coffee cart for their midday blast of caffeine. Behind them, 6 lanes of self-driving cars and a passenger tram funneled workers back toward the main bank of elevators at the center of the district, elevators that ran the full height of the station. Don't worry about it, Senna said, waving off her apology while swatting at the vapor rising from her milk. She liked the slightly grassy taste of the drink. It made her wonder if it was the kind of smell one experienced during a real Earth summer. I do worry, Marin replied, drinking her coffee. Her nose wrinkled. Shit, they forgot my Zucrose. I can wait. No, I shouldn't leave you alone again. Senna ran her thumb lightly around the softening edge of her disposable cup. She felt stupid and small and unmanageable when Merrin said things like that. But Senna also knew she had earned being babied. I shouldn't have been late. It's too dangerous for you out here. Anyone could, well, Merrin trailed off and glanced around in every direction, which, Senna didn't point out, only made them look more conspicuous. Anyone could recognize me. Yeah, Senna nodded. She wasn't stupid, whatever anyone thought. With a tired smirk, she gestured back toward the coffee cart, the servitor, and the tattooed, eyebrowless man inside it. It already happened, Merrin. Why do you think he refused to charge me for the cup? Then maybe I should get you back to the apartment, said Merrin, tucking one strand of silky black hair behind her ear, chewing her lower lip. This was a dumb idea anyway. No, Senna snatched her cup and took another sip, even if it burned. I've locked myself up in your place for a year. I told you, today I'm going to do one normal person thing, and this is it. So we're staying, and we're going to do it. Merrin sat very still, probably shocked to hear a single word of dissent from the usually pliable Senna. God, that sounded ungrateful, Senna hurried on. I don't mean to be like that. You've done so much for me. Without the apartment, without you. Thank you, Merrin. I mean it, thank you. And thank you for meeting me here. It's nice, being out. She almost smiled, but then Merrin looked at her VIT monitor. Everyone on Earth and in space owned one, craved one. They were ubiquitous, holding a person's bank access, entertainment, contacts, maps, everything. Most people couldn't even remember their own middle names without one. Not just convenient tech, but a lifeline. The small flat screen wasn't just hooked up to the wireless, but to the owner themselves, jacked into the small implant at the base of the skull. It fed users augmented reality advertisements curated by their interests, displaying emojis and images that danced in front of stores, enticing passersby to enter. In fact, Merrin could probably see any number of specials and sales promoted by the coffee cart spinning around her head just then. Crime on the station continued to be almost non-existent. Hard to commit a crime when your own convenient method of finding out, well, anything and everything would also show exactly where you were at all times. It controlled where citizens could go on the station, what levels they could access. It managed a person completely. The station's security even monitored biodata, predicting a stroke or a heart attack before anyone even called for help. Sometimes Senna longed for the convenience of it all, but she had been controlled by outside forces for most of her life. It was time to make her own decisions. She had never gotten the implant. Nobody in the compound had, or if they came there with one, priests removed it. She glanced up from her drink, realizing Merrin had gone silent for too long. And she wasn't lost in thought, but staring at her VIT, scrolling fast. Is something wrong? Senna asked softly. Her pulse started to race. Managing anxiety wasn't exactly her strong suit. That was why Merrin's apartment felt so soothing, so safe. Nothing surprising ever happened there. Just Jonathan. He's always in a shit mood lately. Merrin's eyes flashed back and forth as she responded to her boyfriend's messages, the VIT reading her ocular input through the implant. Hours slashed again. His division at MSC is a mess. I'll be shocked if they don't sack him before the end of this quarter. Then his mood will really be something. She took a quick, sloppy sip from her cup, spilling coffee down her pristine white blazer. God damn it. I'll get something for that, Senna offered, jumping up. Forget it. Shit. Merrin wiped blindly at the stain, still trying to message Jonathan. She only managed to rub the dark smudge deeper into the fabric. I swear to God, between the two of you, sometimes I feel like a babysitter. Senna went still, the milk souring in her stomach. Finally, Merrin glanced up, wincing. That was harsh, Sen. Jonathan will not get off my ass about everything. His job, his mother, his goddamn squash tournament, you. It's just a lot some days, Everything is so much. Senna wanted to say, I understand, but she didn't, because she couldn't. Nobody asked her about anything, not while she was in hiding. While she lived with Merrin and Jonathan, she kept to herself, trying to be the smallest possible nuisance. Not small enough, apparently. Her eyes drifted to the holographic screen suspended above the plaza. It wrapped all the way around like a digital ribbon, news chyrons and station alerts adding noise to the already vividly noisy lights and sounds of Tokyo Bliss. Sector 7, where they had met for coffee, was particularly packed. Food cart on top of food cart, plazas encroaching on one another, the swarm of commuters breaking for lunch filling the sector with a constant hum of conversation, laughter, shouting. A daily talk show broadcast flickered across the plaza screen. Daily Bliss. Senna knew the show well, watched it almost every day, in fact. It was just the kind of predictable, cheerful pap that helped her zone out. The hosts, perpetually elated, wore pastel suits and sat between leafy fake ferns, interviewing chefs, writers, actors, and the occasional palatable station politician. The hosts, Hallie Tang and Zaid Forrester, sat on identical stools, clown big smiles at the ready, their skin glowing with makeup. That day, a striking woman preened between them, her black skin perfect and lustrous and seemingly makeup-free. Hallie and Zaid chatted and giggled. The barista behind them screamed something at a woman on her vit. The lunch crowd peaked, bodies crushing against their table while Senna clung to her teacup. It was so much to take in. She hadn't even noticed Marin was still talking. It's become this whole thing. I wouldn't even bring it up to you. You know, I said you can stay as long as you want. That stands, Sen. I want you to know that. I would never kick you out. Senna inserted the silent but, and she was right. Jonathan wants a baby. You think he was the one with the uterus, the way he won't shut up about it? Baby fever. I told him, let's just get a puppy first. I don't even know if there's a maternal cell in my body. But of course, he's allergic to everything. She found herself nodding along, half listening, but more intent on the Daily Bliss broadcast. The model's name rolled across the bottom of the screen. Just one word, no surname, Zuri. She was there to advertise a new skin cream, one she almost certainly didn't need. Her big, wide eyes were so dark, almost black, impossible to look away from. The beautiful nakedness of her skin and simple, chic slip dress only made Hallie and Zaid look more ridiculous. Too airbrushed, too injected, too bleached. Isn't she gorgeous? Zaid fawned, flashing his boxy teeth. Just perfection. Perfection. Senna put down her cup, realizing her hands were hurting from the heat radiating through it. Someone bumped into her chair without apologizing. Her heart raced faster. She was trapped, crushed. Just breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And even fish are stupidly expensive now. He doesn't want to pay the biotax, which is understandable, but it'll be a lot higher for an actual human child. He doesn't want to hear it. Marin finished, following Senna's line of sight toward the broadcast. Zuri, I would kill for her skin. Jonathan says her new line is too pricey, but whatever. If we can afford a fucking baby, we can afford some moisturizer. She's perfect, Senna agreed. And speaking of, she didn't know if she had the strength to bring it up, but she had to try. Closing her eyes, she pictured the monitor open on the guest room table. Then she remembered the message, the header in bold and black, unforgettable. Imagine the worst day of your life. Now imagine it never happened at all. I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, it was a little more than I expected. That was a lot.
I know it's a long
remember
chapter.
when I first read this, I'm thinking that's going to be a great parenting couple right there. Was my first thought.
Oh yeah, no, they're
I like
horrible.
Marin, but her boyfriend, who we hadn't even met, is. It's only her point of Jonathan, but it's not coming across all that great. I'm thinking he's going to be a great daddy. Oh yeah.
I don't think Jonathan ever really makes an on-screen appearance, but he's not painted in a favorable light, I don't think.
My friend told me that as the husky dog inherited because their friend of his wife at work, I think, got this cute little puppy. And then it gets big and these who walked all the time, it's not quite as cute anymore. You know, I work
Yeah.
on thinking you can't just give away your kids all the time. Maybe they should try the puppy first and see if they can handle when it goes through the, but yeah, that was an interesting introduction to I thought that was a family not going to go so well. Have you been in Seattle all your life or just last year's? I can't remember.
No, I'm actually from the Midwest. I've been here about 6 years now.
Oh, just in time for things get pricey.
Yes.
I grew up here. It was pretty quiet. It was not by any means like a rustic thing, but when you would tell people when you were on a trip that, oh, you're from Seattle, you know where Jimi Hendrix was from and Nirvana and stuff, they look at you like, what? No, they came from somebody more important than Seattle. So talk to me. You mentioned in something I read that some of this at least is based on real events. I was curious about that.
Yeah, so not a super fun topic of conversation, but crucial to the book. I was in an emotionally and psychologically abusive relationship years and years and years ago. And it was sort of the basis of thinking about this book because I remember the fallout from that was really extreme. I was in a really tough place. You know, I've had to do a lot of therapy, a lot of soul searching, a lot of self-help, you know, a lot of listening to a lot of good podcasts and things like that. But it always made me wonder, like, sometimes you see these people who seem to just have life, like it just feels so easy to them, or things just come so naturally. And it seems like they don't have these big traumas that linger in their life, like mucking things up for them. And which is not true. Everyone obviously is dealing with their own demons, but it sent me down a path of thought of like, well, what if you could just zap that stuff away, right? Like, what if you could just remove traumatic memories? What would happen? Like if that was possible, would that actually make your life better, or would the void somehow be just as dangerous, as like not dealing with it, or dealing with it but never quite getting over it? So yeah, it was just something I couldn't stop thinking about. Like sometimes it seems like there's people where they have a charmed life, and the perception is that they've never had anything super bad happen to them, so things just are easier. But yeah, that was the initial inspiration. And then we'd already done Salvaged, and that was sort of a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And so I thought, well, what if there was a way to sort of take this real life inspiration and also do another fairy tale retelling? And this one ends up being a little more like Bluebeard. So.
Oh, I hadn't really thought of it that way. Yes, I never really wanted to meet Bluebeard after reading a few of those stories. Not even not being a woman. I didn't mean to raise anything unpleasant. I still remember years ago.
It's okay.
I'm capable of putting I'm capable of putting my own foot in my mouth quite well, but I also try to learn from it, and especially other people's doing so. I remember thinking a few years ago, well, that was stupid, when a friend of mine had written this book. Well, I don't know if I want to say her name, but the character is assaulted and the guy attempts to rape her, and she goes from being passively shocked to picking up the giant flashlight near her and clubbing the guy pretty much to death or close to it. And next thing you know, the Atlanta Police Department says, hey, maybe you should come join us. We could train you and you can be a proper, and she becomes a very interesting character with helping women deal with empowerment and kind of the whole.
Uh-oh, I think I lost you a little bit. Oh no. Wait.
He's been having some technical difficulties, folks. Stay with us.
No.
He probably is going to reboot. So Madeleine,
her and he.
Oh.
I feel like we're missing
And
an
so on.
intense story.
Yeah, Dwayne, you were falling apart there. You need the reboot. Let me take over for a moment. Oh, here we go. Well, Madeleine, while he's doing that, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your.
Back.
Oh.
You're muted, Dwayne. No.
Okay, how's that? I'm sorry.
It's all right. We got you back. That's what matters.
I've got the laptop plugged in. It's never done any more than like a warning, like your system's a little unstable. And tonight it's just being a pisser. Did you miss the whole question I was trying to say there?
Yeah, we missed the whole anecdote.
Well, the whole point I was trying to get to is that I learned that no one would ask a guy about a book that featured a character being assaulted if it was based on his true story, unless he specifically stated so. But apparently it was okay to ask women if they were the one who'd been assaulted. And my friend didn't take it so well and proceeded to tell the guy that's why it's called fiction, and just promptly chewed his face off quite politely. So I don't take those assumptions for granted. I think that, it's like the people that say, Garth Nix's collection of short stories, even this was years ago, he would write pithy little introductions, and the one says this story was going to have Aboriginal magic. And he'd done a great deal of research. He talked to people who were Aboriginal and all this, and his editor said, no, we're not going to publish this. You're a white Australian dude. We're going to catch all kinds of shit. It's not worth it. So the story has no magic, because Garth felt there was nothing else that would work the way he wanted to build in a short story. And I'm afraid we're just becoming, I'm all happy about the Me Too and everyone getting their comeuppance and watching the horrible Jeffrey Epstein people go down. And but I think we're getting so sensitive that pretty soon no one will be wanting to talk about anything. And
well,
so
I think there's
got these...
some merit to letting people who, are of that origin or of that backstory kind of take the lead on those stories. I mean, I think I know, at least for me, like Salvage has a lot of difficult subject matter, and it's something that was personal to my life. And it's interesting because one of the impetuses for that, and also this book, is like seeing male authors do such a garbage job of portraying rape in books, and like not really, it becomes like, either it's like, oh, it's a moment of total empowerment and now she's a badass, or it like breaks the character forever, or they're never allowed to like go on any kind of romantic or sexual journey after you've been raped in a book, so those kinds of things. I think there is some value to letting people who, or at least of that gender or of that, have had that experience, sort of like write the books that have the definitive sort of, impact, hopefully, because I know for me, that was a major frustration watching so much media where, a woman is raped and now it's like, oh, well, we don't see her on screen anymore. She served her purpose. Now we know he's a bad guy. Like that's the shorthand for this. This is an evil monster man. So I get it. I get why there's a push to sort of be like, let's have own voices. Let's have people who sort of have the authority here take the lead.
Right. I appreciate papers who will keep identities of victims secret, but I also appreciate the ones who won't publish, like the guys who go on mass shooting, because half what they're doing is looking for fame. And if you won't give it to them, I think that makes them incredibly frustrated, which is fine with me because I think they're pretty disgusting. Anyway, enough of that. So one thing I thought was fun about this is you got these three characters, and let's face it, at least for me, two of them are fairly unlikable, and the third's, well, Senna at least is pretty fragile when she's going on there. And I like the fact that it's not all about, I shall now destroy you and make myself the top dog. They have to work together because they figure out that it's going to all just totally go to shit if they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Did you construct it that way from the beginning? Did you have this whole thing all laid out in a theoretically long plot, or did you flip it around as you went there? I'm just wondering how.
The first draft of this book was pretty different from the final draft. And one of the things that came away from that first draft was, I think it became obvious that having three really different, really strong, pivotal characters who would never have met each other. And, like they're so different. They're from such different circumstances. They don't really get along initially, but that's such a great fictional position to have characters in, right? They need to work together. They need to understand each other to finally, survive. And I think that, you don't want everyone agreeing. That doesn't, you want conflict, right? So creating these characters who are all strong in a sense, but also fragile in other senses. And they each sort of have a different point of view. They each have a strength. They each have a weakness. You get to see them sort of change and grow and become different people throughout, right? And then also actually end up liking each other, hopefully by the end, or understanding each other, right? And needing to rely on each other to sort of outsmart the so-called self-styled smartest man in the universe. So.
Speaking of which, we've got Paxton Dunn, who is very charming, although I immediately disliked him, I got to tell you, probably because I don't know if this is deliberate, but he reminded me of the worst parts of Elon Musk, and maybe somebody else mixed together.
He was the inspiration for Paxton Dunn. Elon Musk was absolutely a touch point. I think our societal fascination with him is so unhinged, and I just thought he would be the perfect inspiration for the type of person that would do this kind of thing. That's not to say Elon Musk would run a deranged psychological experiment on a moon, but like, it's sort of it's an exaggeration, right? It's his sort of archetype taken to an extreme.
Yeah, I remember he and Bezos were exchanging tweets about stuff the other day, and I didn't think he was pretty funny about how the only way Bezos will get to the moon is through lawsuits, apparently, or something like that. But and then when he and Branson, the Virgin Mobile guy, I really don't like, we're fighting over who'd really gone to space, really, versus which borderline of the atmosphere. It's like, then you guys went over like 65 miles. Talk to me when you actually circled the Earth. I'll be a little more impressed.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is great timing too, right? Because having him be sort of the inspiration and then just watching this ridiculous like vanity space race was like, yep, I think I made the right call using him as sort of the launching point for Paxton.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I read The Man Who Sold the Moon, the Reverend Heinlein, which was the whole inspiration for a lot of people's thinking, I think, about commercializing space. But that guy is selling lots on the moon, basically, so people actually get their crap into the space and get to the moon and get things going, not so we can fly up in the air and fly back down 30 minutes later and charge people $100,000 or whatever. I mean, maybe they could argue that their long range goal is actually more nobleness. They're saying stuff at the space station and all, but I'm a little dubious. I am a little, not very inspired by NASA, but anyway. So I've read some short stories, and there's been a couple books and movies about the idea of how memories can be removed. I think Jim Carrey did the one years ago, which was supposed to only remove the memories of the girlfriend he lost and so on. And we've now got Hugh Jackman's film getting blasted all the trailers, Reminiscence, which is sort of a looking back at. I'm not really clear from the trailer if it's his memories with her, or some memories she did in the tanks that he can access. But where did you think about? Oh, I'm not saying this right. So if you suppress, even assuming this project would work correctly, you can take out or suppress the right memories. Did you give it a lot of thought about what would happen to the net person as a result of this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give away too much, but I mean, it starts out as sort of like, this is going to be a hard sci-fi answer. And there is a little bit of it in the opening salvos of them sort of, getting into the program and having their initial meetings and having their initial tests run. And I did actually do a lot of research into how memories can be changed and tampered with, especially using sort of a combination of therapy and suggestion. And obviously there's like drugs that you can use to alter people's memories as well. So I started down that line in the initial phases of the experiment, so that it felt very realistic. It felt very like, oh, okay, this is like a real technology they've developed. There's a few passages in particular where the science of it is explained. But then ultimately, because it's sort of more of a paranormal horror story, right, the answer ultimately becomes something a lot less concrete and something that I was hoping would be more of a metaphor. And I wish I could talk about what that is, but I think it would give it away too much. So it's sort of
doing that.
Right. It sort of begins in a line of, okay, this is kind of theoretically possible. And then obviously we can't do it, but if you could, right, like going down that line, and then ultimately you find out the real source of the power and the real source of this technology is something pretty dark and pretty extreme. So yeah, I mean, I think too, the whole grapple of the book, right? The whole question is, if you did do this, what would happen to you, right? And you kind of see them struggling with not remembering how, like, certain other things, right? It affects other memories that are adjacent, because memory is so interconnected. It's so tied to, other senses that we have. And so even as the experiment is in its earliest phases, you see each of the characters struggling to sort of make sense of the side effects, right? And that's also a way for the horror element to come in, which is like, well, how much of this is like the experiment working and how much of it is maybe something sinister? So
right. I think it was Greg Bear, who may not have coined the term, but always would tell me interesting things. He coined fuzzy science, which is that he would write a book and there would be the things that even a high school physics person like me could understand about. You can put the satellite around the Earth in orbit, but it has to be geosynchronous only in certain ways and so on. Versus you go into quarks and fractal mathematics, you're going to lose me. On middle of the eon, I started treating them like Clark's law. It was just magic, because I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. But in his case, what he wants to do, and I think this is what you're accomplishing also, where there's the line that I understand, there's the line that you probably have researched understand, and there's the line you're fudging, and the trick is to figure out where it's crossing. And if the average person can't figure it out, then you've succeeded very well. And I think that's a great goal, because half the fun is people will often say, well, this isn't really, oh yeah, no, that part's actually true. This part here, we all made this stuff up that you thought,
Yeah, that was something, that I cared about a lot, is sort of having like, well, the foundations of this could work, right, in a theoretical way. You could sort of do this type of stuff, but then you're approaching something that has never been done, right? So of course there's going to be a line or a point where it is all completely theoretical, and it's up to you as the writer to sort of make it feel plausible, right? Even if it's not, even if it's pretty much veering into magic, it's your job to make it feel like it's something that could happen.
Well, whether it be horror, fantasy, science fiction, or any kind of bloody murder we do, my rule is very simple: don't break your own damn rules. First time I met Garth Nix, I asked him about several of the main characters in Sabriel, which is his second book, and about the sequels. And Garth's responsible for sequels. I don't write sequels. And I'm like, but there's all this crap in this book. There's this huge amount of knowledge that's just sort of tossed in there, like, oh, this guys are the watchmakers and the wall builders and the royal family and so on. And I realized afterwards that Garth was doing the classic, it's the iceberg. He shows us this little bit on top. All the rest is in his subconscious. Sometimes it's in the author's conscious. The author's not to show it all to me. They just have to not screw it up. They can't go and say, well, we're using electromagnetic impulses to alter this stuff here through this with this alteration of this drug, and later on say, oh, she overcame that because she didn't like that. Like, no, the science said she should be a zombie at this point. I want to see some continuity. I'm not saying I don't find the character's growth interesting. I was reminded a little bit, it's a different idea, but have you read The Rook?
No, I haven't, not yet.
But the core idea of The Rook is this woman wakes up in the park and she's, I think, pretty much naked except for a coat. And she wakes up and thinks, what the hell? And then she thinks, who am I? And then she thinks, why are all these dead guys lying around me? And she finds this note in her pocket that says, hi, your name is so-and-so, and you're the Rook. And you've just been attacked by this organization. And you have now two choices: to go to this bank, take this money and flee, because we're never going to get our memories back, or B, go to our house, which is here. And I've got all these notebooks and notes, and I will walk you through the people that know you and what they think you're like. And she never recovers her memory. She just builds a new memory. She becomes an entirely different person, which was fascinating to me, more than the action by far. Was watching this woman become from what everybody knew she was like to the part at the end where a couple of the villains discover, oh, she's not, because she's grown up into a whole different person in the last 6 months versus what she was raised as in this, orphanage and so on. And I really like the idea of that. And you've got a different take on the unreliable narrator. Was that on purpose? With the whole idea of like, they don't trust, at least Senna doesn't trust her memories, and they're being messed with in ways they sort of sign up for. Was that just a side effect of where the plot's going, or did you deliberately want to use unreliable narration?
No, I mean, that's definitely intentional. And it's more than anything else, it's really useful for writing a horror story, because what's scarier than not being able to trust your own mind, not being able to trust your own memories and your own perception, right? So to me, it just became such a useful tool to sort of not just show you, oh, the experiment's working or this technology is working, but also how disorienting it would be to have these parts of your life just gone, right? They're just excised, and how that would affect the rest of your memories, and also how it would make you not trust what you're seeing, not trust what you're feeling, not trust what you're experiencing. So yeah, it's absolutely intentional, because it's supposed to build this sense of dread. I think at first a lot of the characters sort of feel relief, right? Because like, oh, it's working. And one of the elements of the experiment is like, they're each given a list of things they're not allowed to talk to each other about, because it could like tamper with the experiment. It could dredge up, fragments of those memories. And so now you're also having someone control what you're allowed to talk about, what you're not allowed to talk about, right? So that brings in this element too of like, wait a minute, is this really for our benefit, or are we being manipulated here? And I think, being in space, for one, is scary to me. Then two, having your mind altered in some way, I think it creates such a great atmosphere for horror.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like sort of intelligent horror. I have no use for the let's kill all the women who sleep around, and the only one who didn't, like the Jamie Lee Curtis character, she'll survive, not because she was smarter or tougher until we got to Ripley maybe, but because she was just a good girl. And I was like, I have no use for that. Talk to me a little bit for a second. Let's go a different tack. I noticed there was this anthology I missed called "Don't Turn Out the Lights," a tribute to Alvin Schwartz, and that was one of my favorite editors of scary stories. First time I read The Choking Doberman, I think, was in one of his collections, and that scared the Jesus out of me.
Yeah, it's
How did you end up
awesome.
in that?
I got asked to do it. Jonathan Mabry's a good friend of mine, and he likes to bring me on for short story collections. I love that. I mean, it's just exciting every time I get an email from him. I know I'm going to be up for something awesome. So I did a different collection with him a few years back. And then, and they're both young adult or middle grade, sort of, right? They're younger audiences. But yeah, they wanted to do a tribute anthology to Alvin Schwartz and sort of the scary stories to tell in the dark, which was a huge part of my childhood. It's one of the first things that got me into reading horror. So of course I was elated to be asked, and it's just like a powerhouse of people in that book. And I'm not talking about me, like R.L. Stein's in it and stuff. It's pretty great. So yeah, it's sort of everyone's interpretation of you know,
Yeah.
what your version of an Alvin Schwartz sort of scary story to tell in the dark would be. So yeah, I got to do one that's sort of crop circle alien inspired, and it's super good. It's a great anthology because some people really went in the more kitschy sing song direction, right, where he kind of had these almost like limericks in some of the anthologies. So some of them are more in that direction and some are more sort of just straightforward horror stories. And then also Iris Compier, who did the art for My House of Furies book, she's actually the person they brought on to do the illustrations as well. So you also get the horrible, spooky illustrations that Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark had. And I was very excited to be teamed up with her again. So.
I admit I don't read a lot of adult horror. The ones I do tend to flame my brain. I still remember reading Song of Kali and how it scared the hell out of me. Have you
Yeah,
read
I'm a little
Vincent's
bit,
horror?
I'm a little of a baby when it comes to horror stuff in general. So I also tend to stay in the more like young adult arena, or you know,
Right.
a lot of like older gothic horror. I love that. I love that kind of stuff. Because to me, I'm like, I kind of want to be more suggestive. I don't try to go super spooky. I'm more interested in creating a sense of unease and something that you think about after it's over. I'm not just here to like scare the pants off of you. So.
Well, I figure if you do that, you should do it. There was a woman years ago. I think the horror bookstore was called Trickster, and I started reading the book. And in the first like 4 pages, the guy kills somebody and promptly reaches down their nose and yanks part of their brain out their nose, which I felt was the author way of saying this is going to be a gruesome book. If you're not into that, now it's time to stop.
I appreciate it was very
I
upfront,
thought-
right? You sort of get a taste right away for what you're in for.
Tim Powers is the one that I laughed the most at. Tim wrote a book which is about the jinn, and he always builds the books in the real world, kind of like in the spaces between what we know happened. This other stuff all could have happened. He's not writing ultimate history, and he gets really cranky when people review it that way. And I don't blame him, but he wrote this one about Burgess Meredith had a half brother, and the jinn had to deal with their father, and they only recognized the brothers like as one unit. And so until they dragged their brother into the Arabian area where he was, the deal can't go off. And you know, there's this whole defrocked nun that's the mother, and Tim starts the book out with very much like it's just a British spy novel, and it gradually gets a little creepier and a little creepier and a little creepier. And two-thirds way the book, you know, when the jinn suddenly appear, some people were quite surprised. But you know, I mean, if you read a book that's published by a fancy, I should have some preparation for that. Where I already talked about that. So I was curious about any feedback on all. This is a very different thing on publishers. I don't want to get Alexis mad at me. The cover seems to represent to some to me that the woman's identity is going away, the way the cover sort of melting her face. Is that at all deliberate, or is that anything you had anything to say about, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of silvery effect
How do you feel about
well, the silvery effect is sort of a direct call back to one of the things that's in the book. I also don't really want to spoil it. It's just like an item that's like a power later on. That's sort of this liquid mercury looking thing. So that's that obviously, but yeah, it is meant to represent sort of, you know, a vanishing or someone who's sort of losing their identity. And I think it's beautiful. I mean, I love the salvage cover as well. I think it's the same designer, same artist. I hope I'm not wrong about that, but yeah, he crushed it on the salvage cover too. So we were excited to have him come back.
I forgot about the other part of it. So do you feel your characters and all of your books have anything in common, accidentally or deliberately? There's a couple others who I won't mention who have certain obsessions in their books, and while they write really well the novels, I get tired of the same theme being hammered in my head after 20 books sometimes.
I think I kind of go in phases.
I mean, you've only written a handful.
I mean, this is book 14,
Sorry.
so I think I'm, you know, I think I'm far enough into my career to have themes emerging, but I think I tend to go in phases. I think the first sort of set of my books was sort of dealing with one question, and then the next set was dealing with another. I don't know, these sci-fi books are both sort of exorcisms of really tough traumas I experienced in my life. And it was for me a way to take that sort of darkness and do something cathartic with it and sort of reclaim it. I guess it's the salvage it and reclaim it. Hey, those are the titles. So yeah, I mean, I think these are both, they're both books about women who are pretty broken down by their traumas and learning to become something new and become something different. I don't know if it's necessarily something stronger or better, but it is something different. And I think that's pretty intentional. So, oh no, Dwayne, we've lost Dwayne again.
Oh, well, you know,
He's back.
All right, well, it leads me to the part, maybe we should look at the questions from the audience. I'm sorry about this. I don't know what's going on. I've got it all
That's
plugged
all
in.
right.
Should be doing
It's
this.
the beauty of pandemic launches.
So looking at the Q&A here. Oh, this is a little bit different than the average question. So it says, have you ever been on any literary pilgrimage as of writers or books you love, or what's one that you'd want to make?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. I actually have had the incredible honor and pleasure of going to Jane Austen's home in Bath, or like where she lived briefly in Bath, and kind of do a tracking of her movements. I'm a huge Jane Austen fan, so that was really cool. I was also 16, so I didn't appreciate it as much as I probably should have. My mom, shout out Lynn, was very stoked about it, and I was a teenager, and but it was probably thought I was way too cool for it at the time. We also got to go to Shakespeare's house and see the bench where he courted his wife. I mean, things like that. It's hard not to feel kind of moved. It's hard not to feel the spirit of that kind of stuff when you're doing that. I don't know if there's any I would still like to do. There's a few places in Italy I think I'd like to go that some writers went to, some bars and cafes. I think it would be cool to have like, a little gin drink in some of the places that Hemingway liked to frequent. But yeah, no, I think those two spring immediately to mind. That's something it's pretty powerful that I've gotten to do. So.
I don't know if we lost Dwayne again, but here's the next question. How do you balance having to trust the reader to go where you're trying to lead them with having to give them the right information to get them through the story?
That's a good question. That was especially tough in this one because there's a lot of timey-wimey stuff going on. There's missing memories. There's chunks of things. That's why it sort of was a tougher book to get right. And the second draft was a lot about that, of sort of, this is too confusing. We need to make sure the reader feels grounded at all times. They can follow the action. They can follow what's going on. I think for me and I, as a general rule, it's like, I don't hold back information, like give the information that's needed. Obviously, if you're building to something, you're not going to reveal it all right away. But I think kind of a mistake that can be made is that you think you're too clever and too precious. And so you keep too much back from the reader. I think it's better to just give them more and make sure they know what's going on. And then it's up to you to be able to build a mystery while still making everything, airtight and clear, and keep people grounded. It's nice too, because this book in particular is a really short time span. It's like everything takes place in like less than a week. So that's a way that's easy too, right? There's sort of like, you can keep track of the days because it's a pretty short amount of time.
Can you still hear me?
Now I do.
You hear me?
Yes, it's a little choppy, but I can hear you.
Sounds like he's got more issues on there. Sorry about that, Dwayne. I'm going to jump in with this other question. Since you've written both young adult and adult fiction, my question is this: what do you think is always true when writing fiction, regardless of age, and what, if anything, is different between the ages?
I think for young adults, you are working with a heightened emotional scale. The stakes are a lot bigger. The emotions are a lot higher. You're working with hormonal teenagers. So if it's love, it's the most extreme love you've ever experienced. If it's terror, it's the most extreme terror. Or when you're writing for adults, I feel like the emotions become a little more nuanced, a little more complex. And then I think what remains true is that, like, at the end of the day, you want an emotional response from your reader. So your job is to craft something that draws something out of the person, whether it's, excitement or fear or happiness. Your job is to make the reader feel something. And if you can do that, then you've done your job.
Another question here is, what is the best money you spent as an author?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually am very low tech. I just use a Word. I don't use Scrivener or anything. I know authors who swear by other writing programs and they have an easier time tracking, characters and chapters and things like that. It doesn't work for me. It's like way too much information. I'm trying to think, what would be the best? Wow. It's really tough. I guess I still had to buy Microsoft Word. I still have to pay for that. I still have to pay for that every year or whatever, the 365 or whatever it's called. Yeah, I don't know. I think, oh no, you know what? A good chair because you're sitting all the time and it ruins your back. So don't sit in a crappy chair. Get yourself a nice chair.
Yeah, I remember doing an event with Julia Quinn a number of years ago, and she said the best money she ever spent on was getting a standing walking desk.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, how can you walk and write at the same time? She's like, it's a very slow treadmill.
Yeah, standing. Actually, this desk I have can be like lowered and raised. It's a pain in the butt, so I usually just keep it at like sitting height. But yeah, but no, it's true. Like if you do it as a profession, you're sitting all the time. So having a nice desk, a nice keyboard, a nice chair is pretty crucial, or you'll wreck your spine.
Well, we got Dwayne back. Dwayne, are you able to give us another question, or? You're still muted.
Trying to think keeps cutting out right in the middle of my talk. I'm gonna try turning my picture off and see if the sound will work. Let's see here.
Ooh, we're getting some dog opinions now.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Well, we got who are the authors that you and that are your friends or just peers that you feel like make you a better writer?
Oh, that's a great question. I am
I bet
always.
you was asked by one of your peer writers who's trying to drop their name.
You try to get me to drop names. I will always shout out Kat Valenti. I think she's the best person writing in sci-fi right now. I'm obsessed with her. I think she's so good. She's so funny. Her work is so just resonant and beautiful. And I'm not just saying that because I want to be her friend. I'm saying that because I believe it. I think Chuck Wendig is dope as hell. He's a buddy of mine. He does crazy weird stuff. I love it. His Twitter feed is a gem too. Let's see who else. This is poetry, but Nicole Seeley, I got to do a retreat, not a retreat, but we were working at a writing camp together. She's an incredible poet. She's just so passionate about getting people to like read poetry in their everyday life and not just have it be sort of this like intellectual high pursuit. And she runs the Seeley Challenge, which is fantastic. And I think it's going on right now where it's like you read poetry every day in August and talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I learned something from every person that I read or talk to. I love talking to people about their process. Chuck Wendig actually wrote a great book about his writing process and the way that he constructs stories. I highly, highly recommend that. I think it's called Damn Fine Story. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Yeah. Mindy McGinnis too. She writes young adults, more like heavy, dark stuff in young adult. I think she is like one of the best young adult writers we have right now. She's also an incredibly cool person. She does have Dalmatians, 2 of them. They're really cute, but she's just doing things in YA that I don't think anyone else is doing. I think she's taking risks that no one else will take. So I read her books and I'm like, I wish I was this good. So.
Oh, Dwayne, are you
okay? Am I audible?
You are.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on, but it'll probably crash by the time I ask something. So I'm really sorry, Madeleine. This has never happened before. Worst I've had was it sputter on a couple times, and you've
we're making it work.
So I think we've covered most of the questions got put in the Q&A. I guess one of the questions I hate to ask a writer, this was
No.
So what's you have a book coming out in the spring? That one's already done. Or are you still working on it?
Oh, yeah. So I have, let's see, there's a lot coming. Next year I have 4 books coming out, so it's a lot. In November, I have my first middle grade book with Dungeons and Dragons coming out. That's going to be really exciting. It's fully illustrated. It's fantastic, especially if you're like an adult who loves D&D and you have kids and you want to sort of introduce them to the material. It's just phenomenal and lots of fun. So that'll be out in November. And then in end of March, I have the Book of Living Secrets coming out. That's a young adult book. It's sort of cosmic horror, fallen through time, book within a book kind of jazz. And then I'll have my first romance novel coming out next summer. And then the next D&D book, the second one, will be that November. So it's going to be a busy year.
So you've all been just goofing off during COVID, I say.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Just it's funny because actually this book and the romance novel and the Dungeons and Dragons book, all written during pandemic lockdown. So, if nothing else, I got a lot done.
Well, I'd like the fact you could keep track of how many books you'd written, because you asked some of these guys like Harry Turtle, and there's like, shit, if I know anymore, I've just done too many books.
I hope I get there. I hope I get to the
names.
point where I totally lose track. That would be exciting. Excuse me. Rude.
You've got 2 guests friend run back there at one point. So no pen names or other names out there that you're currently writing under? Okay.
I will have one out next year under a pen name. It's like a really, really, really young reader's book, but yeah. So that's still all being finalized. Yeah.
That's giving me a headache sometimes. I can see why certain authors do it, but when they have like 4 or 5 and I'm trying to keep it straight, it's like, oh man.
I don't want to do more than 2 or 3. I think that would be the max. That would be the max for me.
Okay, let me just check the Q&A again, see if anything else popped in there since I went and got blue again. Let's see. Well, listen, I don't think they asked. If they did, sorry. Do you have any hobbies or side activities you regularly do that have helped?
Cut off a little bit there.
Yeah, the question is, do you have any hobbies and or side activities you do that regularly provides inspiration or ideas for your work? You mentioned Dungeons and Dragons and World of Warcraft. Are you involved in the role-playing game community at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big gamer, and that's always inspiring. It's always nice to have someone else take you on a journey for a little while, sit back, relax, enjoy someone else's narrative. I'm really into powerlifting, which is great. It's a way to turn off your brain, but it's also been a great way to understand physicality in books. And like, if you're writing something where someone is physically very capable or strong or athletic, I think having that sort of insight into like, oh no, this is how much training it would really take to be able to do this kind of stuff. That's actually been very educational in terms of understanding like, oh yeah, no, that would take years, right, to be able to do certain physical things. Hi, Bingley. Trying to think what else. The dogs, obviously, they have each of them have made an appearance in some of my books. And I don't know. I mean, I think I'm just like I love to read very widely. I don't just read in the genres that I write in. And I think that's one of the best inspirations you can have, is just reading stuff. You might never like even have the intention of writing something that's, I don't know, a mystery. I don't know if I'll ever do a straight mystery, but like I love reading Agatha Christie books because I think they're constructed so cleverly. I love the way she does books. So yeah, I think that's probably the most. Gaming does take up a lot of my time, so that's probably the primary one for sure.
Well, you never know what someone's going to say. Can you guys hear me? I'm not lighting up again. Jeez.
You're frozen, but I hear you.
Mercedes Lack of this question, get told that she wrote Fugitive Heroes fanfic in her spare time, and I was like, say what? Okay. I think we're about out of time. My computer's apparently having issues. Anything else you'd like to say? Thank you for spending the time with us. Thanks to Madeleine and her little sidekicks for coming and spending time with us. And hopefully next year we'll be doing this in person in the store. And
yes, that would be fantastic. Yeah, no. I hope you run out and grab Reclaimed. It's a lot of fun. It's a spooky, fun, fast read. And thank you for coming and listening. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me, University Bookstore. I really love it.
All right. Thanks a lot, folks. Good night.